Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Business Influence Podcast with me, Leroy Mark, still in studio at the IMC conference. Joined in studio by Vaughan Croeser, who's the VP for Marketing over at SAB. And Vaughan has said he's got some nice treats for me after this, so we might have to strike the set because we have a party planned for later.
Leroy, great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
I need to ask a couple of questions before we get to the hard work. You're a trumpeter?
Correct.
Yes.
I didn't know you knew that.
Yeah, I mean, I did my research. I need to understand, how do you move from being a trumpeter to being a marketer?
Well, when I finished varsity, I actually couldn't get a job. I had finished varsity, sending my CV around, and I'm getting like nothing. And then my one friend said, no, let's go play in the Barnyard Theatre. They've got a contact. Went for audition, and I got into the theatre. And the first year of my career, I basically played trumpet 6 nights a week. Doing a show called Glory Days. It was magnificent. My mother was quite stressed. She said, now he's just going to join a band and that's it. And then luckily, shortly into that Barnyard contract, I managed to get a job at SAB as a sales rep.
So SAB saved you from your artist career.
I kept it alive at SAB.
Are you the entertainment at Friday afternoon drinks?
I have been.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Vaughan. I think the conversation today has always been about how marketing is business. And I think one of the places where marketers have a more prominent position is in industries like SAB's, where, how you disseminate the product is very important to the bottom line. Have you found that over the years, marketing has become less of a support sort of a profession and more of in the room with the rest of the C-suites?
Look, I was speaking to someone about this earlier. I'm always shocked when I hear marketers say that they're like fighting for a seat at the table. And I don't know if it's a SAB legacy thing or if it's a FMCG thing, because I've only worked at SAB. But fundamentally, marketing needs to be in the cockpit, the co-pilot of the strategy. Marketing needs to be held accountable for the growth of the organization. So I think it's fundamental that marketing is part and parcel of the strategy. In fact, should be leading the strategy and driving the growth of the organization.
It's always been interesting to see how in the marketing space, there's also hierarchies of what is seen as marketing and what is seen as a fad. What are your views over at SAB around things like influencer and social media marketing?
No, firstly, I think brands have to stay true to what they are. They have to be consistent over a very long time while coming up with fresh ways, to present themselves. I think the world of influencer marketing is definitely maturing.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be more formalization of that channel in terms of its measurement, its commercial value. But I certainly see great value in that channel.
How do we deal with regulation? I think, your corner of the world is heavily regulated, how you are able to market. And whereas social media marketing, for instance, is less regulated, some would even say not regulated at all. And how do you find yourself in, working with influencers when you're so heavily regulated and they're so heavily unregulated?
Absolutely. I think we take great care in how we select our influencers. So we've formalized a process for identifying who are the right influencers for our brands and really looking at their values, what their purpose is, what they speak about, to make sure that these things align with our values and our purpose, not just as the brand, but also the entire organization. So we go through a very rigorous vetting process, and then of course tracking the performance and the value that they bring. And I think the brands in my stable that do it really well build really long-term reciprocal relationships with those influencers.
And I think that's what my next point would be, where, you know, you see a lot with the influencer marketing. Part of the, I guess, criticism is that it's just too fleeting. You know, you spend hundreds of thousands of rands on an influencer and a campaign for, oh, I don't know, a month or two, and then we hear nothing for another 6 months, and you also have to sort of build the wheel again. Which,
Absolutely. I mean, some brands in our stable, I think, have it really figured out. They commit to a certain group of influencers. They share the same values. They do great work over time in a very reciprocal relationship. Because I think and then there's an authenticity with that connection. And I'm not saying because some of my brands are not doing that. You know, so they're still figuring it out. But that is when I see it working well, is when that relationship is well established for the long term and mutual values.
Some of the brands in your stable have been able to create in communities the kind of legacy I think that money actually can't buy. I think of how, you know, SAB's assets have been seen in football, in cricket, in rugby. We've seen them in the creative spaces, in the arts. You've been able to infiltrate those corners. I'm very interested in the sort of strategy behind that, how you guys at the office have thought about how you see yourselves out there in those communities.
Yeah, we look at these things, we call them mega platforms. They are moments in culture that people are very passionate about, moments that bring people together, and they are moments where a beer is appropriate in that environment. So sport naturally comes to mind. It's a thing that does great for nation building, for bringing people together, and it's in that great environment where when your product is there, you know, you can tell stories about your brand. And the same goes for things like music. You know, Castle Light has been doing unlocks for over a decade. It's a mega platform. And yeah, I think that those things are important to shape brands and to help them stay relevant in culture.
It's interesting to me how, you know, those brands become the mainstay of the community. What do you think, if we're to crystallize the principle, do people want from brands over and above just selling a product? You know, you've seen, as you say, Unlocks has been part of the lexicon of the South African entertainment scene for a decade, a little over. We've seen, you know, when the Premiership, you know, football is on, you know what you're going to see there. You know, it seems like audiences are asking for a whole lot more from brands than just an entertaining advertising campaign.
No, sure, and I think brands have a responsibility, I think, to make positive impact in the world, and we certainly see sponsorship as such a vehicle. We've been sponsors of Bafana Bafana for 32 years, unbroken. Okay, and a lot of sponsors they left, but we're still there.
Because there were times when
you go through these things, and the Springboks 40 years, not 1 year that we skipped. And the same for our cricket team, also 32 years. So these are long-term investments in sport that we take very seriously. And I think when brands do that, they do make positive impact in the community. I mean, I spoke today on stage about our lime farm that we have in Hoedspruit. This was a brand marketing problem which resulted in the creation of like a whole new value chain in a rural area. And the Moletele Family Trust, which owns that farm, they are the beneficiaries of the proceeds because we buy the limes and use them in our serving ritual with Corona. So yes, these brands have pervasive impact in a very positive way.
And I think we've been able to see them inculcate themselves in the community in ways that are creatively building the communities, but still establishing a value chain where SAB is not only doesn't see them only as consumers, but in some other ways as business owners, as collaborators, as supply chain for the product. So I think,
of course, I mean, our retailers play a fundamental role in the township economy. These are formalized businesses that are licensed, that pay taxes. So I think it's great to have that ecosystem.
Where are we looking when we see into the future, 5 years on, SAB? What are we doing then? How are we staying relevant from a marketing point of view? Do we have AI Vaughans running around?
Look, I think SAB's got such a proud history of good marketing. It is like a marketing university, I think, in some respects. So it's something I take very seriously, actually, and for us to stay at the cutting edge, to keep shaping brands, that influence culture and that has a positive impact on the world. So I think there are some fundamentals that will stay the same of how to build great brands. And I think there's going to be new technology and new channels that just help us become maybe more efficient, more impactful, and reach people in new ways. But the fundamentals of how we build brands, I think, will stay for a long time.
And we hope you continue to support and look after our communities while giving us a cold beer to end off the week.
Leroy, thank you very much. It was lovely speaking to you.
Lovely speaking to you too. Vaughan Croeser, VP Marketing
Are
at
you
SAB.
listening? Damn.